merry band of O-Satters, this is not a podcast. This is in fact a Sockmatician review. I've been contacted by the good people at Blacker Yarns. Many of you, I'm sure, will be very familiar with Blacker Yarns, and they've asked me if I would be willing to review two of their brand new yarn bases that are coming out. And those two bases are the St Kilda lace weight yarn and the Cornish Tin 2. And the reason why they've asked me to review, and the reason why, well, obviously they've asked me to review because they want to publicise their new product. The reason I've accepted is because they have given me a skein of the Cornish Tin 2 to give to you as a giveaway. So I thought, what better way to implement this than to combine this review with the strand along that I'm going to be running throughout October this year, starting on October the 1st. So that is going to be the first of the prizes for the strand along, which is a knit along for stranded work. If you want more information about that, I'm not going to go into that here, but you can find that out on episode 30 of my podcast, which is called All Things Knitwise. You can find that on YouTube if you haven't seen it already. So let's get on with it. I've been sent two little samples which I'm going to be knitting with later on this afternoon, and they're very lovely colours. This first one here, this is the Cornish Tin. So let me read you a little bit before we go into that about what it says here. Everything about Blacker Yarns is about using British fibres, which I'm all in favour of. Blacker Cornish Tin is their 11th birthday blend. It says on the back here, I've got this little colour card which I'll show in more detail in just a sec. After surviving our 10th birthday and the success of last year's Cornish Tin, Sue at Blacker Yarns felt we could just about cope with doing it again. Gluttons for punishment, obviously. Again, we've... So here is Tin 2 in celebration of our 11th year. Again, we've had hand-blended this yarn using fibre from our favourite small producers. There were many people who missed out last time, so we've brought tin back one final time. Like before, this specific blend is a truly limited edition and will only be made once, which means that whoever's the lucky winner of this skein is going to be a very lucky person indeed. This steely grey woolen spun yarn, now spinners out there will know a lot more about this than I do. I know the way yarn is spun is either woolen or worsted. To be honest, I'm not really sure of the difference. I may look into that and tell you further later on in this review section, but for now, just know it's woolen spun. It's blended from a collection of the highest quality British fibres, including alpaca, Portland, Saxon, Merino, Gotland, Jacob, Shetland, Black Welsh Mountain, Mohair and English Merino. If it has all of those things in it, it really is quite an unusual blend indeed. Tin 2 is a careful blend of lustrous, smooth fibres with slightly more bulky wools to create a lovely handle, and give the yarn a delicate halo. The Gotland and Mohair fibres give the dyed shades a subtle pop of intensity. This wonderfully bouncy yarn is available in a gorgeous silver grey and 7 dyed shades, all named after Cornish tin mines. We've spun Tin 2 to both 4-ply and DK. Now I've been sent a sample of the... This is the fingering weight, the 4-ply. I don't know what the DK is like. I'm sure it's just like this, just a little bit thicker, of course. So, looking at the colour card here, we've got how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, that's not quite true. Not 8. Well, 8 different colours. I'm not quite sure what this means here. They've got the 4-ply and the DK. It looks like they've given me samples. They sort of look the same. that must be the sample of both, but it's hard to tell. But in terms of these colours, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 at the bottom, and this one is Levant Grey, and it's saying it's undyed. So I'm assuming that this is the colour of the actual the fibre itself. It's very nice actually. I quite like the undyed. I'm getting to be quite a fan of natural fibre colours. Much as I love what all the dyers are capable of doing and fantastic colours out there, there is something quite wonderful about knowing that this just grew like that. So we've got Dulcoath Turquoise, which is this top colour here, which is sort of, all of the colours are kind of muted. Then it's not turquoise like Kingfisher blue or anything like that. They feel very natural. I'm assuming part of that, now you dyers out there can probably tell me more about this than I know, but I'm assuming part of that is the fact that it's not a white base to start with. It is this steely grey colour. So putting colour on top of that, it's going to react with that original colour anyway. And I think that's what gives them all, either this is accidental or whether it's been well planned, I'm not sure, but it gives them all very much a coherence as a group. I can imagine you could wear any of these colours in combination with each other. You could knit them together in any combination and find ways that they would fit. I mean, this red, rose red, would be very nice with the blue, but would also be very nice with the little pink that's right next to it. They all work very nicely. So we've got the Dulcoath Turquoise, the Polguth Blue, which, yeah, I guess it's blue. It's a very sort of sea greeny blue, sort of with like greyish tones to it as well, which is very nice. There's Ding Dong Purple. Ding Dong Purple, what a great colour name that is. This is this one here. It's sort of like a dark plum or an aubergine colour. The Poldice Pink. It's very dusky pink. It's not sort of neon-y and it's not baby pink or pastel in any way. It's a very rich but muted at the same time colour, which I like very much. The Wheel Rose Red, which is this much deeper, richer, more intense red, but it's still not like a vermilion or a scarlet. It's very much got sort of blue undertones to it, which is very nice. Then there's the Gorland Grey, which is kind of got a greeny tint to it. I think the colours on screen in this light are showing up pretty much true, and this Gorland Grey, I would say, well, I mean, it is definitely grey, but it's certainly got greenish brownish tinges to it. Then you've got this lovely steely Levant Grey, which is the undyed one, and then you've got the Wheel Kitty Orange. Now that's clearly what I've got here, and it's very interesting because it's less like an orange and more like a gingery brown, but they're calling it orange, so we'll go with that. And here it is. This is the sample that they've sent to me to knit with, and I shall be knitting a small sample with this. There's a real bounce to this. The feeling of it's quite sturdy. In the skein, I haven't unwrapped this yet, so I don't know what it feels like sort of running through the fingers, but I just wanted to sort of let you see it as it comes first of all. And it's British breeds. I know what Blacker Yarns have wanted to do is to prove that British breeds can be up there with the luxury fibres. You know, it's not cashmere. It's really not. It's a much sturdier, much more it's got more body to it than some of those softer yarns. As people know, I'm not hugely sensitive to scratchy wool. It's got a bit of prickle to it, and it's, I'm not going to lie, it is not the softest you're ever going to find. However, it's certainly not the prickliest and certainly not the scratchiest, but it's got a rigidity to it, a sturdiness to it, a solidity, which I really like. Kind of like sort of the difference between a merino and a blue-faced Leicester. Now, I'm a big fan of blue-faced Leicester, as many of you will know, and take that same difference and take it further. So moving on from blue-faced Leicester, you've got this sort of bounce to it. Now, I suspect that that's going to mean it's really, really going to hold stitch definition really well, and I imagine will make cables pop really nicely. So I am planning to knit a little swatch with some cables with this, just to see if that is in fact true. That's not what I've heard from other people, it's just my own surmising based on what I'm feeling here. The colours are very sort of, there's a lot of depth to them. Let me see if I can get this to focus on the yarn rather than me. Let me get out of the way. Don't know. There's a lot of depth to them. If I look into it, there's definitely some orange hues, there's some mustards in there, but there's some little black hairs in there. It's really going to be difficult to see on camera. Let me see if I can get that to come into view at all. I don't think I will. But there's little tiny black hairs in there and darker greys, which just give sort of the edge of darkness to it. So they sort of trap the shadows a little bit rather than catch the light, which I really, really like. And yeah, it's got a sort of a little bit of hairiness to it. I suspect some of that is the alpaca and the mohair, and a little, you can see there's little guard hairs coming off it. And they're long, you know, these fibres are really good and long. It's hard for you to see, you're not going to see that there's anything, but oh, you can just see, look, you can see there between my fingers, I think I might have just snapped it. Yeah, but really long, so a good 3 inches there on some of the fibres. So I think that's going to help with drape, and it's going to help with the feel of it, I think, and add to the durability of the yarn, which is great. So that's the Cornish tin, and more about that in a moment. Then I've also been sent a small sample of the St Kilda lace weight. Much different colourway there, as you can see, very different from the more muted shades of the Cornish tin too. So the St Kilda, moving over to this, let me talk about, again, it's a limited edition, and black St Kilda yarn is a unique and rare homage to the Scottish archipelago and the World Heritage Site on the outer edges of the Hebrides. The island's native Boré and Soay sheep are two of the oldest and rarest of all the British breeds, so that's exciting on its own. You know, there's quite an exclusive fibre base to have in this yarn. So there's only enough wool to make a limited amount of yarn each year. These fibres are hand blended together with Shetland to create a beautifully delicate and textured yarn with plenty of bounce. It's the bounce that I was talking about with this one, which, yeah, it's not kind of just soft and squidgy. It's really got a sort of, it springs back. There's a spring to it. These fibres, blah, 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 blah. Our St Kilda has a real grip, so it's exquisitely suited to lace knitting and textured shawls. Now I think this will have the same kind of grip, and I think it will work wonderfully well for Fair Isle and stranded projects in the same sort of way that Shetland yarn does, because the grip means, you know what I mean. It's just going to hold everything together, and any floats on the back will slightly felt into the fabric of it after a little bit of wear, which means that there's going to be less catching. All of that great for stranded work, and I think it's going to work really well with these yarns. Now, the colourways for this have all been done by Joy. Now, many of you will know Joy, who's the knitting goddess. It says here she's an independent dyer of specialist British knitting yarns. All her yarns are dyed personally by Joy in small batches, so every skein is unique. Joy is an expert dyer, and yes, she is. Her astute colour sense shines through in these highly saturated jewel tones. Jewel as in jewel, not dual. Hand-dyed yarn possesses a great depth and intensity, which is particularly striking over the subtly shaded St Kilda yarn. This collaboration between Blacker Yarns and the Knitting Goddess came about from a desire to recognise the importance of this country's rich textile heritage and promote the fibre from such rare and beautiful sheep. Now, St Kilda is a lace weight. I didn't talk about the yardage on this one. Let me go back and do that for you. We have here in 100 grams of the fingering weight, the 4-ply, you're going to get, it's 70% wool from some of those blends, 10% mohair and 20% alpaca. And you get 350 meters, which is 380 yards to 100 grams. So it's not the thinnest of the fingering weight yarns you'll ever see, certainly enough for a pair of socks in 100 grams, and I think they're going to be nice and sturdy, and there's a little bit of, it's a little bit thicker than some of the thinner sock bases that are out there. Now I often find with my size 9 men's feet that I've got loads and loads of yarn left over from some of the thinner ones, and with the thicker yarns, certainly enough to be left over to do some darning and stuff like that further down the line, and I think that would be more like this. I don't think I'm going to have acres and acres and acres left at the end of a pair of socks, but then I like quite a long sock, so maybe that's my own fault. And when we get down to the St Kilda, In terms of yardage, we're looking at, it says 100% pure new wool, so it's very, very different. There's no mohair in here, there's no alpaca. And it says it's 700 metres, which is 760 yards per 100 grams. So it's substantially thinner. Of course, it's classed as a lace weight. I have known lace weights that run to 800 metres rather than 700 per 100 grams. So this, again, is a little bit thicker than some of the lace weight yarns out there. Which it's odd because the look of it, it looks to me very much like a fine fingering weight rather than a thick lace weight, but obviously that's to do with the grist and the sort of the loftiness of the yarn. So this is probably fairly lofty, I would imagine, which will help with the bounce. It means there's a lot of air in that. So even though it's quite thick, it's not very heavy. And of course, lace weight means it's about the weight. I'm not describing that very well, but weights are not all about thickness, if you see what I mean. Yarn weights are not all about thickness. So this comes up as a little bit thicker than some lace weights, but then it is very, very fine at the same time. Now this colourway, going to the, this is Loch Herta, going to the colour chart here, and Joy has done a beautiful job. Let me separate some of these strands so you can see them properly. And this is the colour chart. They really, really are saturated, beautiful. We've got, I'm going to butcher these names, I'm sure. We've got Klesgore, which is the yellow at the top here. It's a very rich mustardy gold. That's showing up on screen as slightly more yellow. It's actually more a little bit sort of gold rather than bright yellow there. And Connacher, which is this lovely sort of fiery flame orange, which does seem to have quite a lot of heathered tones in it. So if you can see on screen there's some sort of more paler orange and some deeper reddish hues there as well. Then we've got Ruival, which is a very deep reddish pink, or pinkish red. Not sure whichever you choose to talk about there. Then we've got Mole Shoei, which is this vibrant puce colour here. That's showing up very true to life on the screen, which is good there. And it's, again, there's a depth and a heathering to these colours. They're not all completely solid. They're going to give a real depth to any kind of project that you're knitting them with. Beautiful. This Stack and Armin is a lovely, rich, opulent purple. Then we've got Loch Herta, which is what this is, so you can see exactly how that is. It's got blue tones and purple tones and all sorts of different colours of shades in there. Really, really vibrant. Very, very nice indeed. Then there's Glen Bay, which does look pretty solid, or maybe that's just this particular little sample there. It's a very, very dark green, almost to the edge of going black on that. Then we've got Levenish, which is this beautiful turquoise colour. It's interesting, you see, if you compare that with what's being called the Dull Coath turquoise on here, they're poles apart. They really are. The top one on this lower card, and then this turquoise where my finger is here at the top. Very, very different. And this is really sort of very rich colour indeed. Then we've got this Oysterval. Again, I have no idea how to pronounce these words, which is a very sort of summer grass green there, very sort of yellowy, limey green. Again, heathered with lots of depth and texture to it. Then we've got Mullach Moor, which is this sort of slightly richer, leafy green there. And then there's some undyed colours as well, which are also available. The Isle of Doon, which is this natural cream colour. And then this beautiful grey-brown Stack Lee, which is down there at the bottom. They really are very, very beautiful colours. Joy's done a fantastic job. As it says on the back, all of her skeins are unique and individual. She's a hand dyer, so the swatches the samples I've got there won't necessarily be exactly the same as the ones you get. I don't know how much variation there may be. That's something between you and your supplier. But I think everybody knows with hand dyed that the joy is not knowing exactly what you're going to get. Just make sure you get enough of one batch to finish one project, because you may not be able to match those things at a later stage. So I'm going to dash off now, and I'm going to knit with these. Well, I'm going to knit with the recommended needle sizes. This tin for the 4-ply, it says it recommends a 3mm needle, and for the St Kilda it's recommending a 2.25 needle. So I'm going to do that, and I will join you and tell you how it felt to work with these lovely yarns. I just thought I'd pop back before the knitting process begins to share a few thoughts on the ball winding process. I've now wound my 2 mini skeins into these little balls. I hand wound them, not because I was too lazy to get my ball winder out and the Swift for such small samples, but because I wanted to feel how I wanted to know how they felt running through my fingers as I was working with them. Now, it seems, of the two, I'd say the St Kilda feels softer, and this one feels a little bit more rustic and a bit more rugged going through the fingers. However, I didn't get a sense of scratch or anything like that as I was passing through, and I think that'll be probably the same with the knitting process. This, the Cornish Tin particularly, is incredibly grippy. I had the skein around my knees, and as it was unravelling, it was really sticking to itself. I don't know how long it's been in that skein. I don't know if that's just because it had been twisted together, but there's a real sense of grip there, and I think that's really going to work very well for stranded projects, as I said. This one less so, which might be more a product of the fact that being thinner, it's got less surface area, so there's less to stick. But interestingly, as I started to play with it, I realised just how fine this is. I'd said it didn't feel much thinner than a fingering weight. That's entirely wrong. It is very, very fine, particularly when you stretch it out. It gets very, very thin indeed. So 2-ply. So I look forward to seeing how they both knit up, and I will show you some of the process and progress that I make in a moment. Well, it's a little while after I filmed the last section, and I've been working with the Cornish Tin 4-ply, and I've made this little swatch. I deliberately wanted to put in quite a few different types of cabling on it. I haven't washed this, I haven't blocked it, so this is literally straight off the needles. And as you can see, as I suspected, it does hold stitch definition very well. It's not the tidiest piece of knitting you'll ever see. I'm aware of that. I did it as quickly as I possibly could, and my cabling might be a little bit untidy. However, up the side here I've got 2/2 twisting to the right, and on this side I've got 2/2 twisting to the left, and then these crisscrossing lines here are travelling cables of 2/1 going to the left and to the right. And then, just to spice things up a bit, I put a 2/2 cable in the middle, cabling every 4 rows instead of every 6, which I had here because I wanted to see the difference that would make. And I mean, they certainly pop. There's certainly a lot of definition, a lot of shadow there. You can see, held up into the light, you can really see what those cables are doing, and from a distance they do hold up as well. Now, how does this wool handle? It would be disingenuous of me to try and pretend it was anything other than quite rustic. It's kind of harsh, and it's not the smoothest going through the fingers as you're working it. But I have a theory that that's not why people will be going for this kind of yarn, so I don't think that's really a big issue. I didn't not enjoy it, if you see what I mean. It wasn't the case that I thought, oh, this is horrible. I've knitted with softer yarns. I've also knitted with coarser yarns. What I do love about it is I like the feeling of this final piece, possibly more than I enjoyed knitting with it, but I mean that's you know, what you have at the end is what you're doing it for in the first place, so that's okay. As you can see, it is quite hairy, so stitch definition sacrifices a little bit for the bloom and the fuzziness that's on this, if that's something that you're worried about. If you need something with incredibly crisp definition, then this isn't it, but it certainly has definition in terms of the texture. I have to say I quite like it. I like the feel of it. I like it. It feels very, very sturdy. It feels like this is not going to go anywhere. This feels like it's going to be around for a long time. As for what I would and wouldn't use it for, I think I would be cautious of using it for something like a hat, just because I think, I mean, it looks gorgeous, it looks lovely up there. I think that would start to bother me on the forehead if I wore it for a long time, particularly if I was getting sweaty underneath, just because of the prickle there. I absolutely would use it for some Fair Isle on a jumper or something like that, or a tank top, something that wouldn't necessarily be worn next to the skin. However, I'd be very happy to wear it as a pair of socks. I believe it's going to be very, very durable, and I think that would be a lot of fun. So in terms of what it's good for, I think there are lots and lots of different options. In terms of what it's bad for, that's very much down to personal preference. Some people would have no problems wearing this as a hat or a tam or a beret or something like that. I wouldn't want to. I love how the colour works as it catches the light, now that it's a piece of fabric rather than just twists in a skein. I really, really like this colour. It's very honest. I know that seems like a sort of strange thing to say. It's a very honest colour. I like it. I like it a lot. It definitely has that same sort of bounce that I felt in the first skein. There's a spring to it. I'm going to wash and condition this and block it a little bit. I'll be interested. I'll pin it out a bit because this swatch is taller than it is wide, so I'll stretch it a little bit, make it into a square, and I will film a little bit more when I've done so. I suspect it will soften quite a lot, but only time will tell. Before I get back to you with my washed and blocked swatch of the Cornish tin, I thought now would be a good opportunity to show you the skein that I've been very kindly given by the good people at Blacker Yarns as a giveaway for one of you lucky viewers. So this is the skein in question. It is one of their 4-ply, so it's the Cornish Tin, 70% wool, 10% mohair, 20% alpaca, and this one is in the colourway Ding Dong Purple. Well, that couldn't be more perfect. Ding dong. I think it's very lovely. As you'll have seen from the rest of this video, you'll know my thoughts about it. And this can be yours. This is going to be one of the prizes for the Strand Along that I'm hosting on my podcast throughout the month of October. All you need to do is cast on no earlier than the 1st of October a new knitting project which uses stranded technique, stranded colour work, Fair Isle or any other type of stranded work, but it needs at least 2 colours. So you can have as many colours as you like. I myself will be knitting a pair of Latvian mittens with sometimes 4 colours per row, but with your colour work then it needs to be proper stranded work. And that is all. It'll be running through the month of October. Please be a member of my group on Ravelry and subscribe to my channel here on YouTube. And if you are one of the lucky people who gets picked for a prize, this skein of lovely Ding Dong Purple Cornish Tin 2 from Blacker Yarns could be yours. I've done a little bit of research into the difference between woolen spun yarn and worsted spun yarn, and as I mentioned earlier, it's all something to do with the way the fibres are prepared. So in a woolen spun yarn, the fibres will be spun from a piece which is not necessarily combed in such a way that all the fibres will be lying parallel and just sort of overlapping end to end. In a woolen spun yarn, they would be carded in a much more haphazard way, and the fibres will be going in all sorts of different directions. This leads to a lot of air being trapped between the fibres when it's spun, and gives rise to the bounce that I was talking about in both of the St Kilda and the Cornish Tin 2. I didn't know that, and when I was talking about that, but it's very, very evident in the yarns themselves. Whereas with a worsted spun yarn, the fibres are much more parallel, and you get less air, so you can get a sort of hardier. It's not as soft, it's not as airy, probably not as warm, but it'll be hardier and sleeker and smoother with higher stitch definition. So that seems to be the difference as far as I could make out between the two, and these are definitely woolen spun yarns. Very lofty, very bouncy and very springy. I've now had the chance to knit the second swatch with the St Kilda lace weight yarn, and I haven't blocked it, I haven't washed it and blocked it, so it's just going to have to be fresh off the needles. I don't have time, I'm afraid, but I have now washed and blocked, as you've seen, this swatch from the Cornish Tin 2, and here it is. I put some hair conditioner into the water because I wanted to give it a good soak with that, and it really has taken the edge off the prickle. It's still a fairly coarse, fairly rustic, rugged yarn, and that's never going to change, I suspect. However, it feels much smoother, and it would still have a little bit of itch factor for somebody who's sensitive to that, but it really has softened up an enormous amount. So I think this is the kind of thing that would be much more suitable to wearing on the skin once washed and conditioned, perhaps a couple of times. It's really soaked in some nice stuff, and then it's going to be very, very usable indeed. The colour is gorgeous. I didn't press the swatch in any way. I did stretch it out horizontally because I wanted to make it square, just for my own madness. But you can still see very much this. The definition in the cables is really, really nice. So there we are. That's the Cornish Tin number 2, and here is my little lacy swatch with the St Kilda lace weight yarn. I decided, as it is a lace weight yarn, that I would make a little lacy swatch. You can see the pattern there. This is unblocked, it is unwashed. Overall, I would say the St Kilda is much softer, generally speaking, than the Cornish Tin anyway, which is interesting because this is a pure new one, doesn't have anything else in it. So I think it's got some Shetland in it, and the other yarn, the other fibres that are in it are obviously quite a lustrous blend anyway. This is just some stitch pattern that I got from a stitch directory that I have at home. It was quite fun to knit. I don't do much lace knitting, so I don't know if it's any good or not. It looks all right. It would probably block out okay. It feels, it's got that same durability as the Cornish Tin, which is nice, and it's got the same spring and bounce that I keep talking about. It's also a lot softer and a lot less scratchy, and I would, again, I'm not sure if I'd really, do you know what, this, I might be able to cope with this in a hat. Not that I can imagine myself wearing a lace weight and lacy hat anytime soon, but that doesn't bother me in the slightest. It's really, really lovely to work with. It doesn't feel quite so as delicate as some lace weight yarns. My lace weight yarn experience is not huge, but I have felt sometimes that some of it is in danger of snapping. That's not the case with this at all. I felt in very safe hands, even though some of it seems quite fine indeed. The colours on this one are really, really beautiful. The way the blues and the purples interact with each other, you can see in the light there. Very, very nice indeed. So I'm a big fan of the St Kilda. I may actually want to get hold of some myself for a lace weight project. I suspect it's got a good amount of stretch to it. I suspect this would block out very, very nicely, and if I were to make something substantial that was lacy, I think it would take quite a bit of blocking, which is really, really nice. So overall, my summing up, they're very nice yarns indeed. I'm going to give them a mark out of 5, and I would give the Cornish Tin, I think, a 3.5 out of 5. That's my star rating for the Cornish Tin, and that's based on a lot of things. It isn't the softest yarn in the world, so I have had to mark it down a little bit like that. But again, I don't think that's particularly useful necessarily, because it's not going to be the kind of yarn that people are going to go to when they could, if they wanted, go for something much softer. They're going to go for this for its durability. They're going to go for it because they like the Britishness of the fibres. They're going to go for it because they like the colours, which are beautiful, and overall, you know, that has to be taken into account. So it's definitely a 3.5 out of 5 for that one, and I'm going to give the St Kilda a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 is a high mark from me. A yarn would have to go a very, very long way to get 5 out of 5, and 4 is pretty darn close. So I like this. I like the colours. I like how it feels when I'm working with it, and it's definitely a thumbs up from me. So there we are, that's my review of Blacker Yarns, Cornish Tin 2 and St Kilda Laceweight yarn. Both very fine yarns indeed. I hope you've enjoyed my little trip, my little trip through working with them both, and they are being launched this September, so I think end of September, 20th, 21st, something like that. I think Yarndale maybe. It's around now. As this goes live, they'll be about ready to ship, and I believe you can pick up your own skeins of these beautiful yarns at either at Yarndale or at Blacker Yarns website, which I am posting right here. So happy knitting, thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.